Audience engagement is a buzzword that is hot in the public speaking realm. But what does engagement actually even mean? For that, let's look it up on the internet. Let's see. Engagement means the action of engaging or being engaged. Thanks, internet. Not really that helpful. So let me give you my definition of engagement. Engagement is simply having the audience be involved and interested in what you are saying. Here's the thing. Very rarely do audiences want to just hear a speaker talk at them. In fact, statistically speaking, the human mind can only absorb about 18 to 20 minutes of a speaker talking continuously. That's why most TED Talks are anywhere between 12 and 18 minutes. So if you are a keynote speaker or you are a leader and you are facilitating a keynote session or a workshop or a seminar or a training that is more than 20 minutes, how do you keep your audience engaged? Well, there's various performative aspects that you can use to make sure that you are a charismatic speaker and keeping the audience engaged in that way. But for this particular session, I want to give you the tools to keep your audience engaged in the questions that you ask them. Now, it's natural to ask questions of your audience to keep them engaged, but I often see speakers fall flat on their face when they're asking questions. So I'm going to give you 3 strategies on how to increase your engagement through the process of asking questions. Number 1, ask specific questions. Too often I hear speakers use these questions as their questions. What do you think about this? Does anybody have any thoughts on this? Think about it. That's it. Sometimes speakers just say, think about it. Now you can see that these questions are incredibly vague and they don't really get to the heart of the matter. When you ask vague questions, guess what you're going to get? Vague responses, or rather, no response. So the key is to ask specific questions. Now, I'm going to give you some strategies and some examples of specific questions, but keep in mind that I don't know your content. And the more specific you are in your content-related questions, the more specific your answers will be. A more specific question can be something like, define what you think blank means. Blank being the term or the content area that you are speaking about. How do you use this in your day-to-day life? Or how could you use this in your day-to-day life? This is a great question because it is asking your audience to put your content in the context of their life and evaluate it to get a more specific response. Another great specific question is, what challenges do you see in putting this strategy into practice? Audiences want to speak on that because as they are receiving your content, they're not only evaluating how it's going to work for them, they're also evaluating how it could not work for them. This is a very tricky way on asking what questions they have. Instead of just asking, what questions do you have on the material that I just presented? Asking them what challenges they may have gives a more specificity to their response. The second strategy is embrace the power of the pause. And I know pausing during presentations, especially when you're asking a question, can be really, really dreadful. You ask a question and a second goes by and nobody raises their hands, and it feels like you're slowly falling into an abyss where no one is listening to you. And that's not necessarily true. If you're asking great questions, keep in mind that your audience needs time to process the question that you just asked. And when they communicate that response, they are public speaking. They are opening themselves up to rejection, ridicule, and judgment. So not only are they formulating their thoughts through your content and your context, they're trying to articulate it in a way that is going to impress other people, or at least not offend them. That doesn't always happen in a moment. So here's what you can do. You ask your specific question, and then you do what's called the teacher pause. The teacher pause is a dreaded 3 long seconds. It really is a lot like this. What challenges do you see in putting this strategy in place? Now that was so epically long, not just in my head, but probably as you're watching this video. In my head, I counted 1001, 1002, 1003. And I probably counted it faster than usual because there's no audience in front of me. And yes, that pause can be very, very terrifying, but it's also a great signal to you. If someone hasn't raised their hand after about 3 to 5 seconds, that's your cue to maybe reframe the question, restate the question, or state the question in a different way in a different context. But above all, make sure that you are not just asking the question, but giving your audience time to formulate a response. And my final strategy for you is one of my absolute favorites for audience engagement. Whenever I ask a question that I really want an audience's response to, I use the 2-to-1 strategy. What I'll say is, hey, I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm going to call on the first 2 volunteers, and then I'm going to call on 1 person randomly. Most of the time, what happens is that I'll get 3, 4, 5 volunteers. And here's why. People want control. They want control over when they speak. And when somebody hears that they may get called on randomly, they're not going to wait for that opportunity or that chance. They're going to take control of the situation by formulating a response a little quicker and volunteering just so that they don't get put on the spot. And especially if they have something to say about the topic, they are more willing to raise their hands quickly because they know that if you call on them then, the chances are significantly less that you're going to call on them randomly later. Engaging your audience is a multifaceted approach. It takes a lot of charisma building and a lot of preparation. But one of the key elements that you can incorporate is making sure that you're asking specific questions, that you're giving your audience some time to respond, and that you're gamifying the question and answer series so that your audience stays interested and involved in what you're saying. Now, if you want to keep connected with strategies like these in content areas of communication, confidence, and storytelling, make sure that you hit subscribe and make sure that you get yourself off of mute, speak up your story, and I can't wait to see you next time.